Can a sumo fighter survive in the UFC? With a tremendous impact, two strikingly large men collide on an earthen ring. They are thickly muscled, flexible, highly trained martial artists. They are sumo wrestlers, also known as rikishi. When all things are equal, the bigger rikishi usually wins. But rarely are all things equal. Throughout sumo's history, there have been smaller rikishi who, with the proper technique, have toppled man mountains. Sumo wrestling is a Japanese phenomenon. It is the country's most iconic sport and widely popular not only in Japan, but with fans throughout the world. In this video, we are going to take a closer look at sumo wrestling and if it can survive in the UFC. But before we do this, remember to give us a thumbs up and a quick click on our subscribe button to get more videos like this one and support Brutal TV. Thanks! But for now, let's get back to sumo. Sumo's origins go back nearly 1,500 years, making sumo one of the oldest organized sports on Earth. There is evidence that the precursors of the combat sport probably came from China or Korea. In Japan, the first sumo matches were in religious ceremonies to pray for a good harvest, and eventually they were used as a training ground for samurai warriors. Sumo had an influence in the development of many modern Japanese martial arts, and today it is the unofficial national sport of Japan. There are many traditions and rituals of today's sumo that are uniquely Japanese. It is significantly more than just two large men wrestling. Even today in Japanese society, rikishi are thought of as godlike heroes. The rules of sumo wrestling are pretty simple. The wrestler who first exits the ring or touches the ground with any part of his body besides the soles of his feet loses. Matches take place in an elevated ring called a dohyo, which is made of clay and covered in a layer of sand. A contest usually lasts only a few seconds, but in rare cases can take a minute or more. There are no weight restrictions or classes in sumo, meaning that wrestlers can easily find themselves matched off against someone many times their size. As a result, weight gain is an essential part of sumo training. Although sumo wrestlers don't look like they are very fit, it pays to remember that looks can be deceiving. Sumo wrestlers get a lot of exercise. At a sumo stable, or heiya in Japan, training starts as early as 5 a.m. and can last for up to 5 hours straight, and it's nothing like what you would expect to find your typical group fitness class. For example, during an exercise called Butsukari Geiko, wrestlers take turns repeatedly hitting and pushing each other until they collapse to the floor from exhaustion. Strength, flexibility, and reflex exercises are performed countless times, as well as ukemi training, otherwise known as rolling, which protects them when they fall. Matowari, better known as sumo splits, are an integral part of daily training regime to gain suppleness in the entire body. Even the diet, a sort of sumo stew called chenko nabi, is well calculated. This thick meal is rich in calories and protein, so the rikishi gains weight and keeps it on. The thing to remember with sumo wrestlers is that they train in order to take part in short fights. The longest rounds are just a few minutes, and as a rule, they are usually over in a few seconds. This means the wrestlers go in hard and fast, and not for endurance. Also, remembering these guys have a lot of weight to carry around. Put up against a mixed martial artist in a fight usually means the fight will last a lot longer. So can these sumo guys survive under these circumstances? We're now at the halfway mark, so just a reminder to like this video and subscribe to Brutal TV for more top quality fighting videos. Now back to the sumo wrestlers. Let's take a look at some UFC fights involving sumo wrestlers and see how they fared. First up is Taylor Tooley. Born Taylor Wiley, Taylor Tooley had a short-lived mixed martial arts career as the first fighter knocked out of the UFC 1 tournament. Tooley's entrance into the fray of mixed martial arts at UFC 1 was not only his debut fight, it was his retirement fight. He was the fighter on the receiving end of a brutal roundhouse kick to the head, courtesy of Gerard Gordeau, in the very first fight of UFC 1 in 1993. Unfortunately, after just 26 seconds, the fight was stopped due to the loss of teeth and cut to the eye that Thule sustained. Next up is Emmanuel Yarborough, the American sumo wrestler who fought in the UFC 3 tournament and gained fame for his massive size and cheery disposition. Yarborough competed in the UFC in 1994 before the implementation of weight classes. He is easily the largest competitor in the promotion's history, tipping the scales at well over 600 pounds. A sumo champion born in Rahway, New Jersey, Yarborough faced karate master Keith Hackney in UFC 3. Yarborough tossed Hackney out of the cage at one point, but lost by technical knockout after Hackney pounded him with scores of unanswered strikes. Yarborough never fought in the UFC again. As with many other combat sports, sumo was a much more brutal sport in its earlier days. Much like pankration, the Greek version mixed martial arts, sumo was a no-holds-barred fighting style. It was obviously a more grappling-based type of combat because of how it evolved and what the sport ended up becoming. There were kicks and punches and the breaking of bones. It was truly a gladiatorial form of combat. During the 15th century to the 17th century, Japan was in a constant state of war. So much so that Japanese scholars named this era the Warring States period. The country was in constant conflict for almost 200 years and ultimately led to the unification of Japan as a whole. During this time, sumo were not only paid by private military individuals and were also given the title of samurai. Sumo were and still are greatly respected in the Japanese culture as great warriors. But can they survive the Ultimate Fighting Championship? Looking at past events from the start of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, it seems that sumo wrestlers did not fare too well. In fact, there are mixed martial art fighters that originally started off as sumo wrestlers, but have since trained in other fighting techniques in order to take on their various opponents. One of those examples comes in Tsuyoshi Sudario, the Japanese heavyweight sumo wrestler who made his pro debut in mixed martial arts and finished Dylan James via first-round technical knockout at Rizin 24. He then returned to the cage at Rizin 26 in December 2020 and finished Mino Waman with strikes in the first round. Considering his young age, his grappling credentials, and his apparent knockout power on his feet, Sudario looks like a really good prospect. So we think it's safe to say that a sumo fighter is not the most likely survivor in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, but mix sumo with a few other techniques, and it's been proven it can work. What do you think of sumo wrestlers? Can they survive? Have you ever practiced the style? Tell us about it in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Brutal TV for more top fighting videos just like this one. Thanks for watching.